Anyway, today we are looking at a video, good things that people's therapists have told them. So it's got a range of different helpful things. The beginning is a bit, not quite sure if she's being satirical or not. However, the content is still useful. So, I told my therapist that I'm insecure. She said, "Are you really, or are you measuring yourself to people who pretend to be confident? All the people who you think don't try, you never really know." Mine said, "Would you talk to any of your friends the way you talk to yourself?" My therapist told me I'm the only sane one in my house, which is cool. You know, you can have bad therapists, and then you can have really validating therapists. My therapist told me just because the abuse he gives you isn't as bad as the others doesn't mean it's not abuse. Yes, and this goes, if they're making you feel bad now, it's just a stepping stone to worse things, and because you love them isn't a good enough reason to stay. They need to be left alone so that they learn that their behavior is not acceptable for anyone. If your feelings for them are your motivation for staying, it can wait until after they don't hurt you anymore. Drop them if it's safe to do so, might motivate them to get help for their anger issues, and they might be able to get to a healthier mindset and you can get back with them after that. Bro, my therapist said all your risky behavior is how you learn to get attention and validation that was absent in your childhood, and I haven't been okay. Yeah, I came across this one person who was basically bullying his friends, and he was like, "I just want the attention," and I'm like, you know, you can just ask. Just say, "I need attention," and we'll give it to you. Attention is a basic human need. Attention seeking, yeah, it can get to a bad point, but that term in itself is just someone who hasn't been given what they need. Like, the reason why you go crazy on an island by yourself is because you lack the attention you need. You lack the interaction. So I guess if you find someone who does this kind of stuff, just tell them that. Be like, you know, if you need attention, just ask. Just outright. And of course there's some people who won't get it, but if we all start doing it ourselves, it'll become a normal part of culture eventually. So have a think about what things you do to get that attention that you need. When my therapist asked me to say something I liked about myself and I started crying, think about one thing you like about yourself. And don't just scoff and say nothing. I told my therapist I feel like a failure, and she said, "Do you actually, or do you measure your self-worth off of what your parents deem successful?" Or it could even just be with what you perceive as successful. My therapist just makes me color where I feel my emotion. I mean, that's good for people who have been suppressing their emotions possibly ever since they were a child. However, it seems like this person is not having it. If a therapist doesn't work for you, find another one. Therapists are people too, and sometimes you just aren't on the same wavelength, and that is fair. Don't feel bad about turning a therapist down, because if something's not working, like, they're there to help you. They're there to find the benefit for you, and if they're not it, then they should be happy if you find that out and make that decision for yourself. My therapist told me you can only control yourself, how you present your feelings and how you react. You cannot control how others react. Yeah, acceptance of these kinds of things is really important, especially when it comes to things that you find really agitate you. Like, think of things that really get under your skin the most. Think about what can you control, what can you actually control in that scenario, and what things should you accept. I told mine that I seek out men who treat me badly, and she said it's because I don't think I deserve to be loved. No matter what kind of person you are, good or bad, you are worthy of being loved. Mine said something about my overthinking. She explained my thoughts like a super highway, and each car is a thought. You can't try and stop a car. Yeah, that's like that headspace thing. Think of your thoughts like traffic on a highway, and overthinking is you trying to grab onto one and hold it there, and the flow of cars keeps coming, but you're trying to hold onto a thought that just wants to go past. We can put extra meaning onto thoughts. They're just thoughts. And also sometimes with overthinking is your brain is capable of so much, and yet there's nothing really to do with it. So it starts taking anything it can and stirring up some ridiculous storyline that isn't really there because it's being underused. So find something challenging. Guide your overthinking into a productive direction. And that's like a lot of things. Addiction, for instance. My therapist told me it was ironic how much love I give to everyone else because I didn't give any to myself, and I sobbed for hours. Yeah, all you helpers out there, start putting yourself first. Just because you think someone else in the world is worse off doesn't mean you don't deserve help. You're comparing apples to oranges. Yes, love this one. If someone's happier than you, that doesn't mean you can't be happy. And it's the same with sadness. I told my therapist I'm tired of giving so much, and she said, is it fair to hold others to such a high standard if you're going to end up disappointed? Technically lower your standards? I mean, sometimes you really have to evaluate the standards you have for people. Is it actually realistic? Of course things are possible, but is it realistic? You have a right to be uncomfortable with something and express that. Mine said that I'm actually not bad at everything. I just only acknowledge the bad stuff, not the good. Take some time and write down in notes on your phone or in your head, if you can't be bothered, things that you are good at, even if it's a conceptual thing, and make sure you acknowledge yourself for those things. Who else really wants to hug this entire comment section and let every single one of them know that they are worth loving and cherishing? Yes! I told my therapist that I can't stop apologizing. She said that I need to forgive myself, not ask for others' forgiveness. Forgive yourself for being less than you wish you were. It's the human condition. My mom's my therapist, and she told me stop loving your grades and other people's approval and start loving yourself. I think we kind of get taught this low-key, and I feel like here it's where you put down your anchor really dictates issues that come up in your life. Where have you placed your anchor of importance and value? These comments are making me so sad. I know it doesn't mean anything to some of you right now, but you really do matter and you are valid. You're allowed to feel how you feel. How do I tell my mum I want therapy without her getting upset? There's multiple reasons for requesting that. One of which, if your mum really tries her best, then she might perceive therapy as being her failure or something ridiculous like that. So maybe say, you did so well on raising me, however, the world is in a great place and I need therapy in order to deal with it, and I would really appreciate if you could help me with that. You know, putting the blame on the world and not her. However, if it's an angry mum, then I wanted a therapist and was about to see one, but then Corona, so I never got the chance. But now I feel like my problems are too small to talk about because people are dying. Again, the same thing as before. A therapist on this app said you don't have to think everything you think. Kinda hit home. Yeah, they come and they pass. Why are you so worried what others think of you when you know it'll never make you happy? Are the things you're chasing for, will they really improve your life? Sometimes people get this idea in their head that if only this one thing would change, then everything else would fall into place, but that's not how life works. And then they get disappointed, feel extra heavy when that isn't the case. My therapist and I just talked and stuff, but it didn't help because I couldn't open up to her. I don't really open up to anyone. I wish I could. Start with little things, with random people. You can try it on the internet. Just say something you did that day and then slowly work up to things more personal. And then you can start doing it with people in person and slowly work up with them. Little steps really go a long way. Mine pretty much told me that I trusted people too much and gave them too much power when I thought it was the opposite, and that really had me. I told my counselor I don't care at all for anything or anyone, and she asked me if it's my personal choice or am I getting used to feeling hurt. Mine once said, do you really think you're worthless, or do you just measure your worth by how much you help others? To all the helpers out there. The questions therapists be asking always have me feeling more upset than I was. Yeah, some people think that feeling worse is bad, but it's like going to therapy is like a bullet wound. The bullet's still in there and it won't heal properly unless you take it out. You can get infected, you can get poisoned. You have to dig it out in order to heal properly, and that digging out process is really painful, but it's the only way forward. Sometimes feeling worse is the only way to feel better. Mine just said, it's okay to cry. You can't keep it all cooped up, then let it bottle up, because that's when it hurts the most. You think you're running away from your emotions by not expressing them and letting yourself feel them, but you're just making it worse. Start expressing yourself, either through words, letters, music. I told my therapist about how I get mad at the littlest things, and she said that there must be something big that is bothering me that's causing it. Yeah, not expressing how you truly feel about things, your mind will find any little thing to release some of that tension. So it'll come out as little zaps that don't really make sense in the situation. Mine said, you couldn't prevent a toxic relationship because of little experience. I wanted to blame myself for letting that happen. The thing about toxic relationships is they don't necessarily start out very obviously bad. It can be really little things that you let pass, and it slowly builds up into something really bad, which is why it's good to have a think about barriers to put in place, lines that if someone crosses, you will completely stop right there. Mine said, tell me something you're good at without comparing yourself to others. I kept starting over because what I'm really good at is comparing myself. My therapist told me I should stop looking for everything I want in a person when I have other people that each have their own qualities to complete that. Expecting one person in your life to fulfill everything you want and need is unrealistic. I want to go to therapy, but I just can't trust them. My mum is a therapist and is so judgmental about it. Search up good ways to listen to people and have a friend listen to you. They don't have to say any advice or anything. Just a good listen can be just as helpful. Mine said, just because you're learning these skills doesn't mean your parents will know how to effectively communicate. Do you love your friends for them, the actual person, or just the title you get from being their friend? Actually have a think about whether you enjoy time around those friends, because if you don't, you're only taking away your own enjoyment of life. My therapist told me she couldn't see me anymore and that I had to go to a specialist. If a therapist was to understand that they don't have the knowledge or skills to help you and they kept you anyway, that would be extremely unprofessional of them. I understand how this kind of thing can feel like abandonment, and there definitely should be, a better upfront way to deal with that. Transfer. However, yeah, they're just doing their best for you, and they know they can't give you what you really need. And sometimes that has to do with their own character. Sometimes if a therapist has experienced some of the things you talk about themselves, it can become a conflict, so they have to give you to someone else. Because they want you to have effective therapy from them, and if they're compromised because of their own personal issues, it's extremely appropriate to pass you on. It's just the right thing to do. My therapist said that I need to stop being mean to myself for not doing everything perfect and meeting all my expectations, and honestly true. Perfection, it can get to a point where it seems reasonable, doable to get it right. However, when you add in time, it's not reasonable. It's not reasonable to expect these things from you because our time is limited. And sometimes it can get to the point where your expectation will constantly change, and so nothing is ever good enough. And you need to make sure to take note of that. Reflect on your life and your decisions and your thoughts to make sure that's not happening, because you will drain yourself from within. My therapist just repeats what happened in our last session, and I don't want to tell her otherwise because I don't want to be rude. Therapists can't read your mind, okay? So when they're trying to help you, their hope is to eventually make you feel better inside. And if you don't tell them when something doesn't work, then they're speaking for no reason, and that in itself would make them feel worse than if you were to tell them what was wrong. And I know confrontation is easier said than done. And if it helps, you can write it down on a piece of paper and give it to them at the end of the session and then just leave. Because anything is better, and technically they're taught to deal with these kinds of things. They should understand that each person is different and needs different things. If you have a therapist that isn't like that, just remind them, tell them to go watch Carl Rogers on empathy. So yeah, hopefully something in that has helped you, or maybe it will help you sometime in the future. I really encourage considering going to therapy. I think it's a really good thing, and all the cons to it can be avoided. Go therapist shopping. I hope you're all doing as well as you can be, and make sure to get some sunlight.